Welcome in, everybody, to the Wednesday edition of the Pack a Day podcast here on YouTube. My name's Andy Herman. Thank you so much for joining me as always. Have a main topic that I want to get to today right off the bat. It's everyone's favorite topic. It's the Chicago Bears. Everyone's been asking, are the Chicago Bears for real? Are they going to be able to stay on pace with their 3-0 start to the season? And the answer is, of course, no. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll be back tomorrow with an all-new edition. Just kidding. Let's talk a little bit more about the Chicago Bears because I do think this is an interesting topic to dive into. And let's just start with their 3-0 start. I think, first of all, it's worth noting here that they barely beat and had to come back against the 1-2 Detroit Lions. They had to basically stave off a loss from the now 0-3 Giants. And then they had to come back after benching Mitch Trubisky to beat the now 0-3 Atlanta Falcons. So their combined opponent's record, besides the games that the Bears have played against them, is 1-5. And all three of those games were very much in doubt at different points in that game. I guess the Giants game, there's varying degrees of that. The Giants had a chance to win it on their last drive. But this has been a very questionable 3-0 start to the season for the Bears. Now, we should point out, as Packer fans, we know and better than anyone, and we can't be hypocritical here, you are what your record says you are. Last year, the Green Bay Packers were not the most fraudulent 13-3 team. They were just a 13-3 team. So we can't necessarily go out now and say, well, the Bears are the most fraudulent, 3-0 team. They are 3-0. You are what your record says. You play the opponent in front of you. It doesn't matter if you win by 20 or 5. I know the analytics people will say a little bit differently, which I do somewhat agree with. But at the end of the day, the Bears are 3-0. And kudos to them for going 3-0. But this is what my point wants to be today. This is the best case scenario for the Packers, that the Bears are 3-0, in my opinion. Now, give credit where credit's due. I think Nick Foles played well as a Packer fan. Did I like seeing Nick Foles play well towards the end of that game? No. Allen Robinson looks like Allen Robinson. Jimmy Graham looks a degree better than what he did in Green Bay a season ago. Make that of what you will. Anthony Miller's had his ups and downs. Darnell Mooney is a guy that they got in the 5th or 6th round of the draft, who I really, really like, who's bringing a speed element to their offense. Their offensive line's playing a little bit better than expected. Again, now they've got Nick Foles at quarterback. We know what that defense is capable of. Tayshaun Gibson basically sealed the game with an interception last week, their safety addition that's now filling in for Clinton Dix, who they jettisoned. So I do think that there is some talent on the Chicago Bears team. Could they get into the playoffs? Yes. Could they maybe even steal a game from the Packers this season? Yes. Kudos to the Bears for all of that. But as a Packers fan, analyst, whatever you want to call me, I don't even know at this point, I think it's a perfect scenario for Packer fans because this is a team that, as well as maybe they're playing or as well as maybe they could get to as far as they could get this season, this is not a Super Bowl contending Chicago Bears team. So this is still a Bears team whose window is going to have a really tough time staying open because of some of the contracts with Khalil Mack. You've got Nick Foles now as your quarterback. Mitch Trubisky didn't turn out. Tariq Cohen just tore his ACL. You've got varying degrees of efficiency and different contracts along that offensive line. There's just different things that this team is probably going to need to, restructure some deals, especially with the cap going down next season. Their window is not exactly wide open. And I know those of you who follow me close enough will maybe get a kick out of, me talking about the Bears window being open or being closed, whatever you want to call it. But I think from a Packers perspective, this basically is, if the Bears kind of continue this, it's going to bump them out of the Trevor Lawrence, the Trey Lance, the Justin Fields conversations. 3, potentially top-tier quarterbacks in this upcoming draft. That's the last thing that you want to see in Chicago. This also could earn Ryan Pace an extension, a GM who famously traded up for Mitch Trubisky with Deshaun Watson and Patrick Mahomes on the board and has had various degrees of mismanagement as a GM over the course of the last few years. I know I mentioned Jimmy Graham's playing better, but that contract is still very, very questionable. Signing Clinton Dix a season ago, there's just been some interesting transactions that he's made. So I think, as a Packer fan, if this all kind of pushes everything down the road for the Bears and doesn't really allow them to maybe reboot and rebuild and maybe get a top-tier quarterback, maybe a new general manager, what more do you want? I think the Bears, give them credit. They're playing well. I think they could win some games. Again, maybe even pick up a game against the Packers. But I do not see this as a top-tier contending NFC team, and the Bears, and certainly not a Super Bowl contending team. So push the bucket down the road, let them win some games, tip your hat to them. And in the meantime, I think Green Bay is by far and away the better team. We'll see what happens through the rest of the season. But I think that's, again, as a Packer fan, I don't know what more you would want. So I love what's going on in Chicago. I think it is the best case scenario for the Packers. What did Jeff Fisher call it? Some 7-9 bullshit or whatever. I don't know that the Bears are going to get to 7-9, 8-8. Maybe they're 9-7, but they're probably somewhere in that middling range. It's probably a first round exit if they do get into the playoffs, or maybe just missing the playoffs. And again, that gets you the 15th, 16th, 17th pick in next year's draft. All the top quarterbacks are gone, or you have to spend a king's ransom to go up and get one of those quarterbacks, which, again, they've basically jettisoned away a lot of their draft picks over the course of the last couple of years for players like Khalil Mack and things like that. So this is setting up perfect for the Bears to be kind of this middling franchise for the next few seasons, because they're maybe picking up some wins that maybe they shouldn't have won with a team that is okay to good, but certainly not great. So that was my first and main topic for today. My second topic, I just finished offense's grades, so let me give you my top 3 performers on offense this week. Number 1, Aaron Rodgers, which is going to be more often than not, again, just because the quarterback position has the ability to either swing high or low dependent upon how they play, and that's just kind of position based. But number 2 is Allen Lazard. Did have a drop over the middle, did have a couple missed assignments in run blocking, but when you have a couple big plays like he did, another touchdown, he just had a really solid game overall. He was my second overall performer. And then David Bakhtiari. It was funny, as I was going through tabulating the grades, Bakhtiari and Lindsley were going back and forth of which one was going to be the third best. Lindsley, I think, finished 4th best. But both those guys just played fantastic games. Once again, the offensive line as a whole continues to be a major strength on this team. I believe it was ESPN's analytics. I saw this tweeted out. I forget who actually posted it, but I believe they said the Packers have the number 1 pass block rate and the number 1 run block rate of offensive line so far this season. So they continue to be a strength of this team. And with me saying that, I want to talk about one player individually along that offensive line, especially this past week, and that's Lucas Patrick, because this is a player who has grinded to get even to the place that he's in right now, signed that contract extension. It's not this, big juicy extension. He basically got, a nice, I don't know, maybe like 2-year, $4 million deal, something like that. Got him a nice paycheck, but it gave him the opportunity to kind of stick around as a rotating offensive lineman swing offensive lineman backup. But he's now starting at right guard. He got the nod along with Billy Turner on the right side. Rick Wagner moved to the bench this week. I think we could debate that Rick Wagner, Billy Turner position, but no question about it. Lucas Patrick was great. He graded as a +1 this week, plus 1.0, which is a really nice grade, especially for an offensive lineman. Thought that was his best game as a Packer. He's now had 3 games in the positive through 3 games this season, all with varying degrees of playing time. But kudos to Lucas Patrick, who's gone from undrafted free agent to sticking on the team to swing backup interior offensive lineman to now starting games and really playing well through the start of this 2020 season. So tip of the cap to Lucas Patrick. Hopefully he's able to keep it up, because that has been a major win along the offensive line. Really playing better than what Billy Turner was at that right guard position a season ago, and probably right in that conversation, or better than what Lane Taylor was playing that right guard spot, even though it was just 1 game. So awesome job for Lucas Patrick, hoping that continues. My 2 lowest grades this week on offense, MVS was my lowest, just really had trouble separating. Him and Rodgers weren't on the same page on a couple plays. Did have the 1 catch, if I remember correctly, but just not a great day from MVS. And then Jamal Williams just missed a couple holes that he probably could have hit and would probably like to have back. So those were the only 2 that really had negative grades. Robert Tonyan, who interestingly enough was one of Pro Football Focus's highest graded players on offense, had a slight negative grade for me this week. I think it was probably more of a neutral grade for me, but I thought he played well in the passing game, but struggled as a blocker a little bit this week. So those are my grades for the week. Again, I think the Bears are in the exact position that Packer fans should want them to be in. A great game for Lucas Patrick and great start to the season for him. That's going to do it for me today. Make sure to check out Dusty, Steve, and Sarah on today's edition of the Pack-A-Day podcast, wherever you get your favorite podcasts. Make sure to check out my grades this week on Packer Report. I'll see you right back here tomorrow on YouTube. Stay safe and go Pack-O.